This e-lecture will cover Chapter 4 from the Cormier Ch and Osborne additional reading that's assigned in this course, pages 74 to 81. And the title of this chapter is Ingredients of an Effective Helping Relationship. We'll be reviewing some foundational elements that are needed when you work with individuals. Some of this may be a bit repetitive, or you may have heard parts of it, but the reason why I include it is that it does add an extra layer of reinforcement. And the more you hear something, the more likely it becomes truly embedded knowledge within yourself versus just something you've heard a few weeks back. And so that's why I do repeat some of these pieces over and over, because they are so critical for you to truly integrate them into your own practice and to your own perspective. There are some other elements in here that we've not discussed yet, and I want to make sure that we have time to discuss as well as to give you a chance to practice. So without further ado, let's get started. The foundational ingredient to working with individuals is empathy. And this has been discussed in the past, but this is truly that main piece. If your client feels that you truly are empathizing with them, then that summarizes that you care, that you're genuine, that you're trying to connect with them, and that will help them to want to connect back with you. As a refresher, empathy is the ability to understand people from their frame of reference rather than your own. So instead of me trying to think what that would feel like for me, I'm trying to understand the client's view and try to sense what it feels like for them from their perspective. And this is what empathy means. This chapter discusses, in brief, mirror neurons, which is a fascinating study on the brain and the human brain and how we can connect not just by empathy, by it being a skill, but there are actual mirror neurons in our brain that mirror what's happening in front of us that we can interpret when we understand the intention. So when you're working with someone, just like if you're watching someone and they accidentally stub their toe, you might find yourself kind of cringing and going ouch in your mind, or even saying aloud, because you're empathizing and connecting that situation and that intention with those emotions. And so it's a fascinating piece that even our brains support, and naturally when we're with someone and they're expressing anxiety or depression or just angst from their situation, we have in our brain the ability to reciprocate and mirror those neurons. In the same way, when we're not empathizing with them, our clients can also sense that detachment from us. And so that's why it is so important to be aware of that, as well as to continue to work on those skills. Dr. Dan Siegel has done extensive work in this area, and I have included here a YouTube link. It's only about 3.5 minutes long, so it's not very long, but it's well worth you watching. If you're still not sure what this whole mirror neurons thing means and how does this really relate to empathy, this little 3.5 brief clip will actually help tie it together and give you some visual examples. I wasn't able to embed it in the lecture here, but what you can do is you can either back out of the presentation and then just highlight or double click onto the YouTube link or paste it into your browser, or you can finish the presentation and then later on come back to this and watch it. But do watch it. It's only 3.5 minutes long, and I do want you to be able to have the context of mirror neurons and how that plays into our ability as humans to empathize with each other. Validating responses and empathic affirmation. This is an important piece that we haven't discussed at length as of yet. We've discussed the ability to empathize and to try to see the situation from the client's perspective so that we're walking in their shoes. But this is a different angle, because there's a tricky path you can fall into if you think that empathizing means being able to console or to quickly gratify a need that your client has expressed to you. So I want to read this aloud to you. Letting clients know, this is the validating response piece, letting clients know that the way they see themselves in their world is not being judged, but accepted as the most likely way for them to see it, given their individual history. Our clients will come from all walks of life, with all kinds of perspectives that for them is truth. That is their reality. And so validating response is validating the fact that I may think of that differently, but it's not about me because it's about you. I'm able to try to understand your perspective, and I will respect and accept your perspective and view on the circumstance and try to figure out how we can work through it. So for example, let's say your client is angry at you because she was hoping that you were going to be available for on-call crisis work with her. But then when she finds out that you're never on call, because that's not part of what you do and the role that you might have in your agency, She questions how can she count on you if you aren't available for when she really needs you. So you have this angry client that feels hurt and betrayed because how dare you? I thought you were going to be on call. Now, in one capacity, a human response where you want to defend your actions may be something to the effect of, well, that's just not my job here, and that's not what I intend to do, and I have boundaries and personal life as well outside of this job, and while I want to help you, I need to be able to keep those boundaries clear as well. Now, that might be your initial response in your mind because you might feel like I need to defend why I'm not available and why I'm not on call 24/7 for this client. That boils back to your need to defend yourself. Remember, this isn't about you just making a stance and defending your actions towards your clients. It's not really about defending that at all. It's really about understanding clients' perspective. So instead of coming at it from the angle of needing to explain and rationalize why you're not there, which may just further feed into her frustrations, an empathic way of affirming her feelings, validating her response would be, so, Miss Jones, I can sense that this is something that you weren't expecting and that you are frustrated because you had understood that maybe I would be available more than I am available. And I can just imagine that sometimes when you're counting on something to be there for your support and then it's not. And that can be really difficult to deal with. Now, notice in that response, I'm acknowledging her feelings, I'm acknowledging the situation, and it leaves it open so that if Miss Jones wants to say, well, yes, I mean, I shared all this information with you, and now at my darkest moments, I know I may not be able to reach out to you if it's beyond business hours. So it allows the conversation to continue if Miss Jones wants. When we start to defend ourselves and say, well, no, that's just not the way it is, it sometimes can limit our responses. Or if we just say, well, I'm so sorry, yeah, that's not available, then that might make Miss Jones feel like she can't continue to discuss her circumstance. And we want to be able to allow our clients to feel empowered and affirmed for whatever their perceptions may be, and we want to understand it better. And so practice. When you have that kind of response, you will at some point deal with someone in your life who might be frustrated or angry towards you or might have just some ill feelings and maybe expressing that. Practice giving them a validating response that affirms what they're trying to say while not trying to feel like you're defending your stance. So with that, sometimes we feel this need to validate ourselves and to defend our actions because of our own baggage, our own stuff in the past. Maybe growing up, we were never allowed to really express our views and our viewpoints, and we feel like people always just told us what to do. And now here we are as an adult, and we are in our professional career, and this client is challenging or questioning us. And so within us comes that reaction stemming from our background that tells us, well, I've got to defend myself and make sure that she understands why I'm not going to be available for her 24/7. That kind of reason and intention for explaining yourself comes from your own baggage, and it has nothing to do with Miss Jones at that point, but it's all about you and your stuff. So when I say the phrase fix you first, and this is just briefly touched on at the bottom of page 76, why do you think that matters, the phrase to fix you first? Think about that. I'm sure you may have thought of many different reasons as to why, and your book did mention as far as specific reasons when it comes to that need to defend and that need to appease our own emotional baggage that we come to the situation with. However, this is why it's so important that we weed out that emotional baggage early on. And that means right now. That means as you reflect, I want to encourage you to think on what are some of those hot buttons, what are those stopping points that may be barriers to your ability to effectively work with certain individuals or to effectively work in certain circumstances with your clients. Think about those things, and if you feel this is something that really is going to hinder me, get help for it. Go to a counselor yourself. I think it is a fabulous thing when counselors seek counseling because we all have our own stuff to deal with. And I know I have had to go to a counselor back when I was in college, and I worked through some things because I realized that might be something that might hinder my ability to work with certain populations. And so figure out what are those hot buttons. Seek the support, whatever that may look like, and know that counseling is a beneficial thing for us too. We need to get ourselves together. We need to be able to be emotionally stable and secure before we can truly give that kind of support to our clients. How can we help them with their baggage and with their issues if we're lugging around our own baggage and our own issues that are going to interfere with our ability to effectively address and support and empower our clients? So that's why we don't want our stuff to muddy the waters and to possibly affect the way our client is receiving services. So deal with whatever those background issues may be, own them, and then take charge on them and move forward with getting support and resources so that you can be fixed first. You can deal with your stuff first, which will then allow you to be able to handle all the other things that come your way when you deal with clients. This world isn't a pretty place. We were not meant to be here, and I believe, and I can't wait for the day when God brings us to heaven and we will not have any kind of pain, no more sorrow, no more suffering. But until then, we have a world that is hurting, and there are so many problems that if we can't try to help our own situation, we will not be able to effectively help the situations that we deal with through our clients. So, fix you first. Do not forget this. This will come up later on, I promise you, as a hint, in a future exam perhaps. So make sure you understand this concept and you know how to explain it and you know how to apply it in your own life. So limit setting responses is a piece of empathy because when you combine it with warmth and empathy, you actually are reflecting what the client wants, their wish or their desire, but you're not actually providing that gratification. And when you do this and learn this skill, it contributes to clients' growth and safety. And I realize this is maybe taking a basic skill that I'm wanting you to learn early on, and it's amping it up to the next level. But I believe most of you, if not all of you, are going to be at a place where you will get to this point and you will start to be able to develop the skill earlier on. It's better to start off with a bunch of new skills that you're learning early on and you learn them right than to maybe take a few skills, learn those well, but in the meantime you're developing a lot of bad habits that now you have to unlearn in order to learn the right way to do that. And so that includes limit setting responses when you have sometimes clients in your pseudo client sessions, or maybe your friends that you're practicing with or classmates that will maybe make comments where they're wanting you to just make them feel better. Maybe they say something disparaging about themselves, whether it's I'm ugly, or nobody likes me, or I'm the most untalented person on this earth, or I'm such a failure. Those kind of things, when we hear from our loved ones, we might be quick to say, no, you're not. Look how amazing you are. I think you're beautiful. Or look at your hair. Or look at how well you've done in school. And we try to help and quickly fix the situation and put our own Band-Aid on it because we want our loved ones to feel good. And so when they say these comments that reflect maybe that they don't feel good about themselves, we want to fix it. Well, with our clients, we don't want to fix it so quickly like that. A, because it leads to a dependent type of relationship where the client feels like you're going to fill that need that I might need to have filled elsewhere outside of this counseling relationship. And B, it may not actually help the problem at all because instead you've closed the conversation instead of allowing the client to be able to share what's behind that statement. So often they say these statements that are like bombshells, and if we don't allow the opportunity for them to really unpack it, we've just hidden the bomb, and so now we have a minefield that we have to navigate until it sets off again. So here's a scenario. Your client says, all my life I have struggled with my weight. I should just accept it. I will always be heavy. And a sample response, helper one, which is not any of you, would say something like, now I'm sure you can lose weight. I mean, don't give up now. You can do it. Now notice there's nothing wrong about saying this response if this was maybe your friend or your girlfriend or boyfriend or your family member. There's a lot of kindness in this. There's a cheerleading aspect to it. But remember, we're not just cheerleaders that say, go, you can do it. I believe in you. We want to be able to give more substance to that and help our clients to truly have the empowerment to then move beyond and seek solutions from those thoughts and those experiences that may be keeping them back. So instead, the experienced helper would say something like, ongoing challenges can be really draining, and I can sense how this has taken a toll on you. And notice in that response, I am now telling the client, I can see that this is something that you've been dealing with for a long time, and it's taken a toll on you, which would allow the client to then unpack it further. Maybe say, yes, and I feel like nobody supports me, and I'm not really sure what to do, and I've tried to do this, this, and this, and I feel like I'm failing. And so notice the differences in how by saying one response, it might make the client say, oh, well, thank you, and that's it. Whereas the second response allows the client to then feel heard, validated, they felt the empathy from you, but it allows them to also pursue solutions for themselves. We're not in the business of just giving quick band-aid fixes to make people feel better for the second that they're in our office, and then once they leave, they're right back where they left off. We want to make sure to help structure new ways of thinking and doing things and offering solutions and working with our clients so that they can develop those solutions on their own, so they don't need us to say, they're there, you're okay, but instead they can learn how to do that for themselves. So that's why we learn limit-setting responses within the realm of empathy. So now it's your turn to try. How would you respond to the following? A client has low self-esteem. She states that she's the biggest failure and she's recently divorced and has a successful career. She remarks that you probably think she's a failure too. So this client might be seeking that affirmation. Maybe she wants you to say, no, you're not a failure, which very beginning early on practitioners would fall into that trap. And they'd say, no, I don't think you're a failure at all. I think you're wonderful. Which again, sounds nice, but it doesn't help unpack the statement further, and instead it leaves a very superficial level of a band-aid that's placed on the client saying, no, they're there, you're okay, but it doesn't address the things that are underneath. So how would you respond in a limit-setting way that helps validate the client's feelings here without necessarily doing the quick, easy route of, no, I think you're great. So think about it, and if you wanted to pause this presentation so that way I don't interrupt your thoughts, go ahead and do so now. You may have come with a lot of different options, and so continue exploring the many ways to say the right thing. But in this circumstance, I would have addressed something back to her that goes along the lines of, I've heard your experience through your divorce and all that you have survived in the past few years, and yet your ability to manage your career and to juggle all the various responsibilities that you have. And I can just sense that this has been a challenge for you to figure out where things stand for yourself and how you feel for yourself and how you see yourself and how others may see you. And sometimes that can be so hard when we're trying to sift out our own internal feelings with how we think others feel about us too. So notice how I validated her. I set some parameters, but I didn't just do the no, you're not a failure. Here's the next one. A client's a college student. He's confused about his career. His parents are pressuring him to continue the family legacy of lawyers while he's drawn to the medical profession. He wants you to tell him what to do and eases his anxiety. So he wants you to say, you should do this. He wants you to give him advice. And remember, we don't give advice. So instead of saying, I don't give advice, so I'm sorry, I can't do that, which wouldn't be very empathic, what would you say that would give a limit while also validating the client? Go ahead and pause this presentation, think about it, and then press play when you're ready to hear further. So as I hear the statement, what I'm hearing is this client is wanting answers, and that's what's behind the statement. And so I would say something like, it can be so challenging when we have pressures from our family, from loved ones, from individuals that we might respect, and that they are trying to tell us things that we should do for our own lives that maybe conflict with what we think we should do. And I can just sense from you how badly you want to find an answer and you want to find one soon. That would be a response that I would offer to that client. So notice again how I'm validating the response or validating the feelings and the circumstance while then also pulling out what the client was wanting, what was the source of frustration for him, was that he wanted an answer and I wasn't giving it to him. So those are some examples. Keep thinking of ways of how to validate and provide those limits appropriately. And then if you have any questions, definitely bring these up in class because this is a new kind of angle to a skill that some may have naturally, but when it comes to limit setting, most students don't really have a grasp as far as what the best way is to handle those sticky situations that our clients may sometimes put us in by the remarks that they may make. And so keep thinking on how to do that. Therapeutic holding environment, and just in brief, this is our holding space. We are like a container, and if you could imagine that we have this large area that we're wrapping our arms around, figuratively speaking, and everything that goes within that parameter of our arms, it's the words, the behaviors, the actions, the feelings, everything the client brings, and we are containing it. Using our skills, using the words, our understanding, we're creating this safe and supportive atmosphere where the client can feel completely free to share those deep felt emotions. And so we contain that space, and that's what's considered a therapeutic holding environment, when we can allow that safe space to be created. And because we have established boundaries and norms and a culture, as well as our own empathy and warmth that we bring to the situation, our clients can then feel safe to unpack some of that emotional and all of those challenges that they've experienced. So some ingredients for success. Make sure that you keep in mind what these ingredients are, because they are very, very important. Just like every ingredient in a recipe is important, and it will throw it off if you forget to add in the salt. Your recipe is either going to be too sweet or it's going to be too bland. And so in the same way, each of these pieces is an important ingredient to the helping relationship. And the first is being genuine or congruent. So you're not being phony. You're being yourself. You're not trying to come off as something that you're not. We all can see through individuals who are putting on an act. And so we don't want to do that for our clients, because it doesn't help them or us. So make sure you're genuine. And with that comes supporting your nonverbals. Make sure that what you do with your posture, your eye contact, your facial expression supports what the circumstance is. If the client is sharing something that's very personal and very hurtful that's happened and that's going on and their reason for coming to see you, make sure you're not smiling, because that might make it seem like you are completely either insensitive if you think that their situation is funny or even is something to smile about when it's a serious situation, or it might seem like you're completely checked out and you're not listening at all. So make sure all of those pieces of your nonverbal match the circumstance and support what's happening. Role behavior, this is not overemphasizing your status or role, so you don't keep saying, well, as a practitioner of 10 years, or well, as a social worker, I've gone through these courses and in my training I've learned. All those things may make your client feel like you are trying to put on airs and that you are trying to make them feel more inferior. And remember, we work with our clients and we collaborate with them. And so there's no reason for you to keep trying to let your status and your role be known. And then consistency, making sure your words, your actions, your feelings, they match. And this includes your self-awareness. If you're realizing that you're having your own awareness or a reaction within you, seeking the help and being honest with that. Not saying, well, I don't feel uncomfortable with this statement, when really you may, but really being able to find a support with your clinical supervisor or with another colleague that can help with bouncing off, you know what, this client was talking about this issue, and I realized I was having a lot of internal talk within myself, and I was reacting, and I realized I might need to kind of work on this so that way I can stay consistent with this client. And the last few ingredients, spontaneity, this is your ability to express yourself naturally. So often when we start and learn a new skill, we either rush through things or we take our time and we maybe pause a lot. This is expected when you're learning, but as you continue to develop those skills, practice making it so that it's more natural. So you're not pausing and looking at notes every other sentence. That you're deliberating about what you want to say, but you're not deliberating about everything you say, because then that will make it feel like the session is very formalized and it isn't really flowing with what the client's sharing with you. And then positive regard, which boils down to RESPECT, respecting the client. This is committing yourself to the helping relationship as well as to understand your client and to truly get the accurate understanding of their situation. Being non-judgmental, where you don't come from a stance of being critiquing their decisions or their thoughts or beliefs, but you're being non-judgmental and open. Being competent and showing care. Making sure that you're doing all that you can so you can develop the proper skills to really be an effective helper. And then warmth and being warm. And I love this quote that says, without warmth, you can be technically correct, which means you have all of the perfect ways to paraphrase and reflect and to summarize, but you can be therapeutically impotent, which means that you won't make a dent with that client if they don't feel like you're warm and that you genuinely care. So to sum up, keep working on empathy and how to handle those limit-setting responses and validating client feelings. And don't forget to watch that 3.5-minute video from Dr. Dan Siegel on understanding the brain, which is a very fascinating piece on mirror neurons. So you can go ahead and X out of this presentation once we're done, and make sure to watch that, and we'll see you next time.